This is something I should have done a long time ago, but I'm finally committing to making longer form content. I've been posting on social media now for like 4 or 5 years. I think I've finally got to a point where short form is just not really fulfilling me anymore. I think with longer form stuff, it's easier to tell a story. You can take your time and you can make stuff with a little bit more intent and a little bit more purpose. So that is definitely something I'm going to be putting a lot more of my focus into. And yeah, I guess this is the start of that journey. So a little bit daunting. You know, I've kind of built up an audience on Instagram and TikTok. Don't really have that audience on YouTube. So yeah, this is a fresh start for me. This is all new and hopefully it's worthwhile. I think the main thing is the fact that I just enjoy this process so much more, and yeah, I just want to get back to just loving what I do. So this video is about chasing dreams, and I've titled it Average Bloke Quits His Job and Chases His Dream. That average bloke is me. You see, I've been somebody that's been on the other side, so to speak. I used to, when I was younger, watch a lot of YouTubers and watch a lot of these content creators, and I used to think, man, that would be like my dream job. That's exactly what I want to be doing. You know, I've always loved making videos, whether that was in school or even before. That's always what I've loved the most, and the dream for me is to be able to do that as a career and to be able to do it for myself and to work with the brands that I love, collaborate with the people that I think are really inspiring. That's a total dream come true, right? And that's everything that I've kind of had over the past couple of years. And so I wanted to make this video, A, to talk about how I got there, and B, to talk about whether I would say it's worth it or not. Because we have these dreams in our head and we often think that once we get to this place, that's it, we'll be happy, we'll be content. But being someone that's, you know, kind of got to where I wanted to be and still had struggles, I think that's something that's worth talking about. And yeah, just want to talk about some of the pros and cons of, you know, following your dreams and what it actually looks like when you do reach that point. So every good story needs a starting point, and I guess my story starts here. Just left school and I've got no idea what I want to do with my life. Little did I know I'd be spending the next 5 to 6 years working in the marketing industry. I was about to lock into the 9-to-5 life and I guess become an adult. To be honest, for the first few years I kind of liked it. I had routine, my weeks had structure, and I felt like I was working towards something. But then all of a sudden I started to get this itch. I felt like when I was younger I had all these passions and interests, but over the past few years I've just kind of lost them. It was like the monotony of everyday life had just drowned out who I was as a person. I just didn't really have a personality anymore. I was just working, going to the pub, working, going to the pub. As soon as I became conscious of this, I knew that I had to do something about it. So I think this was the point where I started to have a bit of a word with myself, and I started digging my brain for the things that I used to enjoy when I was younger. One of the main things that I enjoyed the most was making videos. One of the other things I really enjoyed was getting outside. I used to do a lot of climbing and camping and things like that when I was younger. So I think January came around and I was like, cool, I'll do dry Jan, stop going to the pub as much, and maybe I'll spend my weekends just going out on hikes and just getting outdoors or whatever. So obviously when I was going out on these hikes, I was filming a lot of the trips and filming a lot of the camp outs I was doing, just kind of documenting it, you know. There was no real thought behind it. It was more just doing something that I enjoyed. And then I thought, do you know what, why not make an Instagram page? You know, if you're making these videos, you might as well share them somewhere. And then yeah, everything that followed that was just mental. After time I started to build up a bit of a following. I didn't always have the highest numbers, but I could tell that the people that were watching my stuff were definitely engaged. I felt as if the relationship between me and the people that were watching my content was pretty seamless. And having the support from the people that were paying attention definitely gave me the confidence to take things a little bit more seriously. And so that's exactly what I did. I started writing scripts, I started putting more effort into the videos, and over time the page started to grow. I felt like I knew exactly what my niche was, and I'd finally reached my audience. The more I put myself out there, the more opportunities seemed to come. So the more of my personality, the more of me that I was talking on the camera or talking behind the camera, that really seemed to propel the content. And I think the more vulnerable that I became in the stories in which I was telling. At the time I'd moved to London, so I tried to sort of document that whole process of moving to a city, and also like how I was still getting outdoors whilst living there. And I think sort of documenting that challenge and just being a bit more myself, that really seemed to connect with people. And I think I had a couple of videos that really took off, and that was kind of where my content started to propel and reach like quite a big audience. So of course, once your audience grows, that's when the brands really start to take you seriously, and that's when they want to get in touch and start to work with you. So I also think that my content and my storytelling was improving quite a lot. I think the thing that always helped me is any video that I'd make, I'd always ask myself, like, what can somebody take away from this video? I always want people to watch one of my videos and be able to take a positive message away from it. And that's kind of the recipe that I've always stuck with, and I feel like it's kind of worked. I've never really tried to jump onto trends too much. I think there's a little bit more longevity in just being authentic and just trying to spread a positive message, and that's kind of always what I've done. So then the brands start taking you seriously, and that's when they want to start working with you. So it, for me, started with them just sending me products and just sort of wanting me to feature it in my content organically. But then eventually I got to a point where brands were starting to offer me like money, essentially, to work with me. You know, at first I just thought, this is great, you know, I've got a full-time job, but I've also now got this sort of side hustle which is bringing me in a little bit of extra income. And I mean, the jobs were few and far between, you know, I never really thought I'm going to be doing this full-time, you know, it was just something that was nice to have on the side. But then I think as I sort of progressed and kind of established myself and within this sort of outdoor community, I started to notice that the jobs became a little bit more frequent. I really did start to think, you know, maybe it is worth taking the jump, and maybe it is worth, you know, having a go at doing this full time, because one of the problems I was having is, you know, if you're trying to balance a full-time job with also doing content full-time, it's a challenge because, you know, editing videos, going out on adventures and filming the content, you know, it takes time. I was really struggling. So at one point I was thinking about dropping the content altogether because I just couldn't do both, or I couldn't do both well. So sort of I got to a crossroads where it was like, okay, I've either got to leave my job or I've got to stop doing the content because it was just too much for me to manage. And I remember speaking to my dad and sort of explaining it to him, and he said, well, you know, I think it'd be silly not to go for the content. One in a lifetime opportunity to even be in a position where you can think about having a crack at doing it full time. So I thought, look, all right, I'll give it a go. If it doesn't work out, I can get another job. It's not the end of the world. And now it's been a year of doing it full time. I can genuinely say, you know, I'm really pleased with myself for making that decision and actually going for it. Because look, I mean, it's not been ideal at times. You know, I've had some real ups and downs and I've had some real challenges. I think the biggest pain point for me is not knowing when I'm next getting paid, my income being quite sporadic. That can be real hard to deal with at times. And I think another problem that I face is my success being determined by how much engagement I get and how much followers I have and how many likes I get. You know, that can really play with your mind at times. And I think that affects you even more when it's like your income depends on it. I think they've been the two biggest challenges, is not knowing when I'm getting paid and the kind of mental space that you kind of get thrown into when you're doing this full time. On the whole, 100% worthwhile doing, you know, I mean, and I've said it a million times, even if I can't do this forever and even if I can't do this for much longer, what a privilege to have had the chance to do it at all. And, you know, in this past year, I've traveled and I've experienced more than I have done in probably my whole life. You know, I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have the freedom that I've got now.